So just reading a little bit about Sinnamon and now knowing you, I think that school worked.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Season 2, Episode 8 of the Strongly Worded Podcast. I am Sue O'Lear.
And I am Johnny Hampton.
And we are recording on a Monday evening. We've set a vibe here in the dining room studio. Yeah. Recording at a different time. And we have a very special guest. And we will certainly talk about a lot of the professional aspects of her life that we want to talk that are going to be the focus of our interview, but I need to introduce her as someone that we're from the same hometown. We were walkers together, which is the elementary school where we met.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. We went to elementary, middle school, and part of high school together. I think you moved when we were just before we graduated. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
And ladies and gentlemen, you might know her as Sinnamon Love. Welcome to the Strongly Worded Podcast.
Yay, thank you.
Our most famous guest ever.
I know.
Yeah, it's exciting.
So Season 2 is about community. And when how Johnny and I kind of started out, the arc of the season was talking about our hometowns and the effect our hometowns had on who we are, who we've become, and kind of the ways that we are affecting our communities where we live now. And it was impossible to consider that topic without reaching out to you, because we are from the same place and we do have a lot of the same influences, but those have evolved with us in very different ways. So I know you as former classmate and, like I said, walker, but you are a cancer survivor. You are a mother and grandmother. You are an activist, and you are a community organizer. You are, and if I use wrong terms, please educate me, but you are a professional in the adult entertainment industry. Yes?
Yes.
And you are our guest tonight, and thank you for being here with us.
Oh, thank you.
That's one hell of a resume right there.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely. It's my pleasure. Sue, when you reached out to me, I was like, yeah, of course, like without even knowing what the podcast was about, because we do come from the same place, and we did start off in life with very similar, values based on our education, opportunities that were afforded to us that a lot of other people our age did not get, who did not go to Walker. Should we talk about Walker?
Yeah,
Should we talk a little bit about what Walker was?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So Walker Learning Center was the elementary school.
Learning Center?
That's what it was called.
Oh,
Walker
boy.
Learning Center. Yeah. And I started at the school I think you and I met in 5th grade, but I started, I think, in 3rd or 4th grade because they had a part-time program. You went one day a week for the academically talented program.
Yeah, I started, I went in the 1st grade for like one day a week for the academically talented program. And so we should preface this by saying that Walker was like an experiment that was like a partnership with General Motors and the school district of Flint. And so what they would do is one day a week, the gifted kids from all the schools would go to Walker for their academically talented program. And then if they decided you were a good fit academically, they would invite you to attend full time. So I think we started right around the same time. Like, I mean, I started a year before you. I started in second grade, but I did my one day a week program in the 1st grade, and it was definitely a whole different experience.
It was.
So wait a minute,
than anybody else had.
So you guys were auditioning for the school?
Yeah, one day a week
sorta.
you would get one day a week you would get bused from your school. Like, and this was all of the schools in the entire city. So it was like every elementary school participated in this program where they take the smartest kids from each class, and you would go to the school one day a week just for, to see, and you would get graded.
But it was like a day full of electives.
So you weren't doing math?
Well, we were doing math, but it was sort of disguised as rocketry like a kind of like I liken it to the STEM program that they have at Wadsworth, similar but different.
I went to public school 24 in Queens. We had to go 5 days a week. Like, what do we do?
It was, well, they were trying to develop engineers at that age. Like, so everything that we did was really geared. It was a gifted magnet program, but everything we did was really geared towards seeing if they could create engineers from the ground up. So, like if we were studying, I don't know, Isaac Asimov. This is my middle school. Like, if you were doing like Isaac Asimov in science class, in English class, you were building model rockets in your science class, and studying, astronomy. Like, and our grade school was the same way. Like, we really did. We had a TV show. We had a TV station. We had a TV station in the 5th grade. Yeah. That was
or do you remember doing Mini Society? Like the big, like, coup de grace of the year was doing a mini society where we created a currency and businesses and business plans.
So
in the classroom, and we'd have to go around and you'd spend money and you'd figure out like where if your business was based in this part of the school, the classroom, then you might make more money because of the location.
Yeah.
It was like a city planning class. Like,
it really was.
So now I know Sue.
And binary. We learned binary also.
What in the world?
We were using Print Shop, like all the things.
Forget about Print Shop. Oh my gosh.
How many people do you guys still keep in touch with from that school?
Not really. Not
A
really.
handful, but really only
on
with
Facebook.
so many things because of Facebook, because of social media. I mean, I don't.
So just know, reading a little bit about Sinnamon and now knowing you, I think that school worked. No, and the reason I say that is because you guys, you both think outside the box when it comes to certain things, and you have an entrepreneurial spirit. Both of you do. So that experiment, I think, worked.
Yeah,
now, you didn't become an engineer, but
right. But we learned to engineer our lives.
Yes,
and in ways that we might not have otherwise, and also because of the way that gifted magnet programs were in the late 70s, early 80s. We wound up being the gifted kids in junior high, and then we were the gifted kids in high school. Like, what I mean? We got a chance. We followed each other as we went along our way. And most of our high schools are gone now.
Yep.
Yeah. Most of the high schools in Flint don't even exist anymore.
Right.
Which is really crazy. Yeah.
It is really crazy. It's crazy. Have you seen some of those posts on Facebook where they take the video or photos walking through the halls of Central High School?
No.
Oh, I'll find one.
I want to see that.
I'll dig it up and I'll send it to you because it's beautiful and heartbreaking all at the same time to see what the inside of the school looks like.
That's one of the interesting things too. Like, to think about the way that we went to school is that we had our math and science was at Northern. For a lot of us, and then our social studies and English were at, and humanities program were at Central. So we were traveling. Like Northern was I grew up on the north side of Flint, but Central was more closer to downtown, and it was it was in a better neighborhood, right? So of course the humanities program was in the better neighborhood. With the real library, yes.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a really, I always tell the stories about growing up when people ask me about how, where I grew up and what it was like, how, because people always want to know my backstory, and to find out that I'm from Flint, and, of course, everybody knows Flint to be three things: the water crisis, poverty, and General Motors. Like, that's all they know about Flint. And when I tell people the stories, like, about, what my life was like growing up, it's a lot of people are surprised because they just don't know.
I mean, Flint is just a statistic to so many people, or a pile of statistics to so many people. And it was really this, even, like you were saying, even in the 80s, even, when the industry and the business there started to change, there were so many aspects of it that were so still vibrant and cutting edge and unlike
any
a
place
lot
else.
of places.
I remember going to the riverfront to, like, with my mom or my grandmother to, like, listen to jazz, like, do you know what I mean, on the riverfront.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, like, we had the Art Institute, the Music Institute of Flint. Like, when I tell people that Flint has an international airport, they're like, what?
Yeah.
So,
but it's true.
But
it's true. Doing theater, that Flint Youth Theater program, aside from what we did at Central, which was amazing, but that youth theater program, I don't know anybody else who did what I did for all those years in a place like Flint Youth Theater. I mean, it was such I thought every place was like that.
Yeah, I mean, I took dance classes, at one of the, I think it was like the music, it was probably the theater, from the theater center. But I took, all the things: ballet, tap, modern jazz, hula. Why? I don't know. Hula. Yes, hula.
Have that on your bio.
Well, I'm here to tell you, not every place was like Flint.
Yeah, I guess not.
I mean, Flint. So Flint was created really out of necessity, right? And I always tell this story because, when they ran out of places to put zoned places to put factories in Detroit, right? They put them in this small community, and then they started to build townhouses because they didn't want workers to be traveling from Detroit 60 minutes or 60 miles into Flint during the dead of winter, because the winters can be really brutal. And so, like, I remember there was a time when the Flint Journal, I believe, was run by General Motors. And Sue, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm almost positive that our newspaper was General Motors run at one point. Like in the 70s.
I have the same memory. Yep, I do. I have the same memory.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
But it was a really vibrant place. And then also because Flint has its own townships, and there's a lot of farmland that was around Flint growing up. So, I was really fortunate. Like, my grandparents, they had a 6-acre farm in Clio, well, outside of Clio, in Montrose. And so I also, in addition to having this really crazy education, I got a chance to spend a lot of time, picking beans and riding horses and going fishing and doing those kinds of things also.
More things that you don't think of
don't think of.
No, because I'm not from there, and I didn't know any of that. So
yeah.
So my dad was the company that he worked for was a supplier to General Motors. How was your family tied to GM?
My dad, my stepdad, both of my grandfathers, and at least one of my uncles that I can remember all worked for General Motors. I had an aunt who worked for AC Spark Plugs. I had another aunt who worked for Pontiac. Yeah, I mean, I'm a GM girl, I'm a GM kid, and and also I have a brother currently who works for General Motors, or he works in a factory. I'm not sure if it's General Motors, but he works in a factory. So yeah, I have a really, that's how I grew up around the shop.
And so when you and I connected on the phone a couple weeks ago, one of the things that we kind of laughed about was, well, of course you're a community organizer. Of course, this is who we are, because this is where we're from. It's a union town.
Yep. Yeah, and not like, an industrial union town like you think of in movies. Like Flint was a middle class community growing up. Yeah. It was all working class, middle class people with 2 cars and the dog and a cat and 3.5 kids. That was how we grew up, right? Yeah. Even if you didn't have, I really didn't know people who were really poor. Like when I think of what I think of now as being poor, I didn't really know that in the 70s and 80s growing up in Flint.
I would agree with that too.
A lot's changed, but back then it was super vibrant. When my parents moved into our home on the north side, the neighborhood was predominantly white, and we were one of the first Black families to move in over there. I remember my Girl Scout leader lived across the street. I wound up joining their Girl Scout troop, which, by the way, I know that this is audio, and so your guests will not be able to see this, but would you like to see my Girl Scout sash?
Yes, I would very much. Yes.
Wait, you still have it?
I got it from my mom's attic this last summer. Okay.
Wow, she kept it.
Look at that.
She kept that in great shape.
Now,
what were your badges for?
So these zeros and ones, that was for learning binary. That was your computer badge, and this one was for government.
Wow.
This is some sort of science. I think it's either science or debate. I'm not sure. And of course, swimming, because we had to do the polar bear swim.
That's right. Break the stereotypes.
Yep, and then we have another one for learning how to swim, right? Everybody swims, and then also I got one for track.
Oh wow!
Which was weird, because why was we running track? And then of course I got my 3 years in the brownies, and then I bridged to juniors, and these were.
I remember those stars.
These were all of the junior stars. I got 3 years as a junior, and I don't remember what this one was.
You was heavy in the Girl Scouts.
I was heavy in the Girl Scouts. Wait. So this is my 5-year pin. My 5-year pin. And the rose was our symbol, and this was the Fairwinds Girl Scout Council, which doesn't even exist anymore. And my cookie patches.
Oh my gosh.
I'm an OG.
You're throwing me so far back.
I'm an OG. Can't. Yep, there we go.
Oh my gosh.
Had those 200 plus badges, so.
That is amazing.
I had to share. Yeah,
I love it.
But yeah,
shout to your mom for keeping that so pristine.
Yeah, she had my Girl Scout. We were clearing out 40 years worth of stuff out of the attic, and she had my Girl Scout uniform from when I was 10. And I threw it away. She was like, "Don't you want to take it home?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to take it home." She's like, "It would be cute if you could get a mannequin." I was like, "No, we're throwing this away." So, but I kept, but I did. I kept the sash, because this was a really, this was a piece of my life. That this was how I spent many years of my life. I was actually, a lot of people don't know, I was actually the first year I did overnight Girl Scout camp at the Fairwinds Girl Scout, the big Fairwinds camp. I was the only Black girl there. And like for the whole summer, I was the only Black girl there. And then later, I had gone, I was in a Black troop, brownie troop before, And I actually brought something else home. I brought home a newspaper clipping from when I was at Gundry before I went to Walker, of us I was in my brownie uniform and we were singing Christmas carols at a senior citizen center. And it was like South, probably, and it was like a Santa Claus. It was so cute. I brought it home. But yeah, it was really important to me because it's like, these are, I was the first the Black Brownie troupe that I was in. We only did day camp. We would go out for like a day, or for like 2 weeks or something like that, during the day, and then we would come home, but we wouldn't stay the night. And then the first year that I joined this white troupe, I wound up staying for the whole summer. What is
this nonsense?
Yeah, it was really wild. I also found a postcard my mom sent me while I was away at camp. And it was like I opened it up. Like as soon as I saw it, I knew what it was because it was like this Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog stationery. And when I opened it up, it was like her letter to me telling me what was going on. And my mom, like apparently my mom was like a writer, and like it was like very very descriptive. It was like the grass is mowed and the dogs are outside, and I'm like, look at Mom.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
But it was so cute because like at the end she told me to make sure I oiled my scalp.
Nice. Sounds like a black mom.
Very black mom, right? Yes.
Oh man, my wife will tell my daughter, "Are you moisturizing your scalp?"
That's great. Flagler United is a new kind of travel basketball experience for male and female athletes ages 8 to 18 here in Flagler County and beyond. For kids looking for quality coaching, ethical mentorship, competitive play, and a sense of unity in the community, look no further than Flagler United. To learn more about the program, check out their videos on Facebook and Instagram or visit flaglerunited.org. Tryouts are happening now for our summer season. And if you or your business is looking for a great sponsorship opportunity, Flagler United would love to work with you. Please email Coach Johnny at flaglerunited@gmail.com and he'll give you all the details. Flagler United. Together we play, united we ball.
But yeah, I mean, growing up in Flint and having those, and nobody else that I knew in my neighborhood like had the kind of experiences that I had either, because I had the privilege of going to Walker, right? And so it was, it was actually kind of weird because, I was bussed out, and we had long days at Walker.
We did.
We were doing like 8 to 5. Or some craziness like
Close
that. Like
to it.
It was like really crazy, and then you'd be bussed out, and then you'd come back. So by the time I came home, the kids in my neighborhood were all like having dinner. You know what I mean? And then I had like 3 hours of homework or 4 hours of homework. It was a long day. But wow, what great memories to have and be able to share that.
Absolutely. So
thank you.
So let's move forward then. So you left Flint, like our junior year? Sophomore, junior year?
I left Flint my sophomore year. I moved to LA. I had an aunt and uncle. Yeah, it was crazy. It was like a jump.
Yeah, that's a big change.
Yeah, so I met one of my aunts and uncles when I was 13, and they realized that I was really like taking care of my brothers, right? I was the oldest girl in the house. I had 3 younger brothers. My mom was in college. She was back in college. My dad was working for GM, my stepdad, and I was like taking care of the boys. So I was getting them up in the morning, dropping the 2 younger ones at daycare, dropping off the other one at Merrill Elementary School, and then I'd get on the bus right outside of his school, and I'd go across town to go to school. And so and it's again that I'd come home and I'd do it all over again, and I'm like making dinner. I was helping to raise my brothers, as happens in working class families, right? And so one of my aunts, my aunt Robbie, who lives in LA, she convinced my mom to let me come live with them for a year. Because she was like, oh, if she likes it, then she can, if she stays for a year, she establishes residency, she can go to college in California. So that's how she got me out of raising kids, right? She was like, let me take her and come stay with me and the girls, because I was in the house full of boys, right? And I have sisters, but like they live with my dad, and then I have sisters all over the place. So we, I got a chance to move, and I went to LA. I fell in love with it and met a boy and was like, this is it.
Oh boy.
I got exposed to K-Day and radio and hip hop, and my whole world changed. And
let's back up for a second. Like, did you want to move?
Yeah, I was all about it. I was like, yeah, let's go. I have so one of the other things about living in Flint is that I actually had a relative amount of freedom, right? I didn't have freedom, but I found ways to carve it out, right? So, for people who who grew up in the 80s who are listening, they'll understand, like, your parents are working, you find ways to get out and do shit that you're not supposed to be doing, right? So
of course.
So my best friend and I, because both of our parents were divorced and remarried, like, she would spend her weekends at her dad's house and I would spend my weekends at my dad's house. And so the dads were like not really paying attention. So she would come over, I'd go to her house, and then we'd go out. So we'd go to like this guy's house, apartment that she's hanging out with, who, had his roommate was a DJ at a club, and now we're in the bar, like, at 14. At 14, 15. So I was like, we would take off and go to Chicago to listen to Louis Vega DJ, and nobody would know we were even gone. Like we were like, we were nerdy girls, and we had straight A's, and we were in the gifted magnet program, but we were like, all this shit is too much. We need to find another cover. Yeah, it was like fun, right? Yeah, it was a good cover. And so like I already had an adventurous spirit. I was already like, I just want to get out, because as much, part of being in this kind of rigorous academic setting, and also growing up in like really super religious families, it's like which you often find in these kinds of like union towns, right? It's like people believe in there's three things: a stable job, God, country, family. Like those are, what I'm saying? Like those are the things. And so it was you almost had to rebel, because you didn't get the freedom that you would have had if you weren't quite as smart. Right? And that's fucked up to say, but it's like the way that we treat kids based on their ability to succeed on certain things, right? So the football players, we don't give a fuck about their grades, and they can go out and they can drink and they can do this and they can do, whatever, because that's going to be their lane. Like, do you know what I mean? And the other folks, we have to keep them and their bodies and their minds very clear, because that's going to be their lane, and that's how we're raised, how kids are raised. And so, unfortunately, we were already like we were in the streets. By the time I hit high school, and I jumped around a little bit. I went to Northwestern for a while. There was a guy that we would leave school, both of us. He was on the football team. We'd leave school on the moped and take off and go to his mom's house while she was at work. Like, do you know what I'm saying? But so by the time my aunt was like, "Do you want to come to LA?" I was like, "Hell yes." I don't have to take care of nobody's kids that I didn't have. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, I'm with it. Give me some freedom, some real freedom, so that I don't have to like hide on the three-way to be able to talk to a boy that I'm talking to. Like, do you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I was with it. I was with it. And go ahead.
I'm laughing at the hide on the three-way, because I remember when I was a kid, I used to call a girl, and someone else would call her first, and then I'd call, and then she'd click the call waiting and cut the friend off, and then the parents would think
that she's talking to her girlfriend.
Yeah, that's right.
absolutely. And it was like, for me, like it wasn't in my nature to not be who I was. Like, I knew from an early age who I was as a person. And a lot of that had to do with the early educational experiences that I had, right? So it's like, when I got a chance to start reading, when you're feeding, a young woman, like both Toni Morrison and E.E. Cummings and, and the Odyssey and, and Anais Nin, like when you're feeding these young impressionable brains all of these things, that there's something bigger than the drill team. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like there's something more out there. And so the opportunity to like, and I had family in Chicago and stuff, but the opportunity to travel to LA, I knew I wanted to explore that, and having a safe way to do that was with it. Yeah. But I only stayed a year, and then I came back, and then I was like, I got to get out of here. And I was like, my mom wanted me to come back, and I came back, and I couldn't do it. I stayed for like a year and a half.
Did you graduate from Central?
No,
or from Flint school?
Northern. Yeah, actually, I left in October of my senior year. My mom threw me out because I was going to clubs and stuff, and we had
once you go out and do something like move to LA for a year, you can't come back.
You can't come back to Flint.
We've talked about that in previous episodes.
It's hard, but I just I went, and I went back, and I just, my whole mind had been really opened, and it just didn't seem, I tried for like a year, and then my mom threw me out, and then I just said, okay, I'm gonna go. I shared an apartment with some guys I knew for a little while, and I was working at the IMA Sports Arena, and my rent was for my bedroom was $63 a month, and I was like, I'm never going back home. Or $63 a week was my rent, and so and then eventually I wound up going back to LA. Like I stayed with the guys for a little while, and then this guy that I was seeing in LA was like, why don't you come back home? And I bought a bus ticket, and I got on a Greyhound, and I went back to LA at 16. And my parents didn't even know I was gone. Like I was, they thought I was still over at this, on the other side of town, on the south side, and I was like in LA by myself. And I wound up actually, I was a houseless youth for like maybe 6 months. I, like willfully, because I was just like, I'm not going back home. But I lived in, I shared space with some kids I met in Venice Beach and Hollywood, and, did that kind of circuit. And they really introduced me to like community centers where I could like take care of myself and get showers and clean clothes and meals. And then I, started following reggae concerts up and down the coast of California, and selling incense on the beach. And I'm doing hair wraps. I was, because I'm an artist, so it's like I'm like, dancing. So I was living my best life. I went to like a Grateful Dead concert in San Francisco, and learned how to make weed butter in the parking lot. It's like it was totally opposite of everything else I had experienced. And I did that for about 6 months, and then my aunt, one of my cousin's friends saw me on the beach and told my aunt that I was there, and she came and got me. And I was like,
you up.
Yeah, I was like, I'm having the time of my life. But what happened was she actually, so she contacted my mom, who contacted like the school district, and they actually had marked, I hadn't been in school for like 6 months, and they had given me all D's because they didn't want to fail me, because they figured something must be going on for me to just suddenly disappears from school. So my aunt was able to enroll me in a community college in LA as a high school student in Flint, and so I got my high school diploma while I was in community college, and I was taking like my freshman classes.
Resiliency, right? That resiliency is Flint. I mean, we've talked about in other episodes how, people from where we're from have a
tenacity.
Grit. Yeah. Yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit.
Yeah.
And talk about, hey, for example, we just shared a couple days ago in our Facebook group the NPR piece.
Oh.
Oh, yay.
And I would love to hear every single detail of how you happened upon every single career. We connected for a minute when I was writing and you were writing, but and then when we talked again a couple weeks ago, we talked about community organizing, and I want to talk about you and the Flint in you that has impacted the industry that you ended up working in.
Wow, great question. So, God, I don't even know how to start. So I got married really young. I got married at 17, and then, excuse me, I got married at 17, and then I got divorced, and it was a really ugly, nasty divorce. And I was working 2 jobs. I was working 2 jobs in a mall. I was working at Natural Wonders, and I was also working at Gap Kids because 50% discount. Single mother, got it.
Yeah,
it's it's good math. That was good math in my head. And it wasn't enough. I think minimum wage back then was like $5.20. We're talking about 1993.
In New York, it was $4.75.
Yeah, I think in LA it was like either $3.25 or $5.25 or something like that. Like it was nothing, and I needed to pay. I needed to pay my bills, like really, really simply. Like that's literally what it was. I actually was looking for some other type of gig, and I kept coming up against these these advertisements for figure models, which is what they used to call, porn back then. And I just, and it's, I kept turning it down. And then there was one day when my son was 2 years old and he had a hole in his shoe, and I was 2 months behind on my rent, and my rent was like $775. And also one of my aunt had told me I should apply for welfare, and when I went to apply, they told me that I was going to have to move because my cash grant was only going to be $425 a month, and that I would have to find someplace to stay that cost less than $400.
That's how they get you.
And I was like, where am I supposed to live for $400 a month? Like, I don't understand. And they were telling me about these, there's these other programs that you can, if you can apply for Section 8, but then the Section 8 list was 10 years long or 15 years. It was something ridiculous. And then it was whatever kind of the housing programs that they had, the wait lists were really long. They were but you could go into a shelter for 3 months with your kids, and then we can we can give you a housing voucher faster. And I was like, I'm not taking my kids to no shelter. Are you kidding me? I'm not doing that. And, especially I think because I did grow up in a middle-class family. I did grow up in a single-family home. I did grow up with, it's like both my mom and my stepdad were in a working middle-class family. My real dad was in he was managerial, whereas my stepdad worked in the foundry. So he was they were on 2 different sides of the tracks, but they were both single family homes, right? You know what I mean? So I just grew up in a way where I was there's no way I'm going to a fucking shelter. Are you kidding me with my kids?
Especially when you don't really have to.
When you don't have to. And it was and I knew that I couldn't, there was, for whatever reason, I felt I didn't want to ask my aunt and uncle to take my kids and come to their house. But they had their own kids, and then they also had foster kids that they had taken in. And I think, but there was just some part of me, for whatever reason, I never asked them if I could come stay with them. And my ex-husband, knew that my parents wanted me to bring the kids and go home, and so he filed a restraining order to keep me in the state, to force me to not be able to financially afford to take care of my kids. And, somebody offered me enough money, and I was like, well, I'm fucking already, so I might as well, you know what I'm saying? Like, why not? Like, you know what I'm saying? Because I was already, like, I had somebody that I was seeing, and a couple, there was, and we were, it was like, whatever. Like, I was open, you know what I'm saying? I was open. And so the idea that I could make enough money to pay the 2 months rent that I was already overdue and make more, pay my next month's rent in one shot, I was like, oh, I'm in. And the first experience that I had was really dope. So it continued after that. I mean, I was really lucky that my experiences were always really good in terms of, for the most part, in terms of the work in the beginning. Systemic oppression and racism aside, but it's like, for the most part,
all the real stuff.
All the real stuff aside, but at the same time, like I was able to lift myself out of a really fucked up situation by getting into the business. So. Yeah, and I was also, I was also really fortunate that I had two women who worked in the industry at the time who were, they pretty much taught me everything I needed to know, and they gave me a sense of community, and they took care of me and made sure that I knew how to stay safe, and taught me some very basic fundamentals of business that I needed to know, in terms of like bookings and other types of things, but. Dancing on 6-inch heels, like the basics. But yeah, I mean, the ability to even do the work, the ability to say, you know what, I'm going to get in and I'm here and I'm going to do what needs to be done to take care of my family. Like that came out of Flint. This is because it's not I don't think that a lot of other people would have been able to make that decision. And not see anything wrong with it.
And I think that's something that I have always, we became reconnected because of social media. Like I said before, I don't know that we would have ever crossed paths again necessarily without it, but I've been able to observe, the bits and pieces that you share on social media, and I see that.
You guys are frozen.
There's no shame in your game. Like you are authentic, and you live it right out loud. And
you were frozen for a minute.
Okay, did you hear what I said? I was saying awesome things about you.
She was too.
No, I did not. I did not.
I was just saying that, there's no shame. Like you don't have, you can talk about what you do. Like I can talk about what I do, and it's so necessary. It's necessary that. I mean,
I'm really, it's easy for me to say that, when I was in middle school, we would get drunk in the parking lot of a homecoming game in the back of a pickup truck, right? Drinking Smirnoff Red Label straight out the bottle. And we were all definitely drinking Boone's Farm, and we were drinking, like we were doing all the things. And so if I can easily say, if I can have the same kind of nostalgia, right, about those kinds, like everybody who has had those kinds of wild experiences in their youth, have very fond memories of those things, right? So why would I, if I can have those kinds of fond memories of that life, imagine just a few years later when someone says, oh, do you want money for doing this thing that you're already doing? And I'm like, sure.
Yes.
Why not? Like it wasn't in my game plan, but of course, absolutely. Like it was an option that was presented. And the one thing that I learned growing up was to look at the variables, right? And to look at the options. And this was just another, the variable for me was how am I going to make the money? That was the variable.
That's always what it is. I had a good friend when I lived in Ann Arbor and had just graduated from college who was paying for grad school, dancing, and
Yeah.
It was work. It was business.
Right.
It's work. It's work. It's work. And I think a lot of people get caught up. Like I very easily tell people all the time that when they call, sex work in general, regardless of what type of sex work it is, the game or the life. And I'm like, no. It's not a game. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people making a lot of money in this industry and have been for a really, really long time. I mean, whether it was strip clubs, whether it was magazines, there's, porn has hit every type of technology that we have had. People have been, I was having a conversation. I've met a lot of people throughout my life, and someone that I consider a friend is Fab Five Freddy from MTV Raps. Mm-hmm. And the first time I was in one of my films was in a film festival, in a movie theater, right? And this was in the early 2000s. He came with me because I was like, he's an art historian, you know what I mean? Like he appreciates all kinds of art. And so I invited him with me because I was like, I've never seen one of my movies in a theater.
In a movie theater.
In a movie theater because movie theaters were gone by the time I got into the industry. And him, having been born and raised in New York City, it was like I wanted to get his perception, being that he was around when there were movie theaters on 42nd Street. Right,
Times
exactly.
Square, man.
Exactly. So imagine
before Giuliani came and ruined it all.
Right, exactly. And so it's like I was like I can't think of somebody else that I would rather have this experience with, you know what I mean? And so but to be able to have that experience with somebody like him, and to be able to be in the theater and to see where, like, and this goes back to what I was just saying, like, porn has literally gone from the girly magazines of like the 40s and 50s to theaters to VHS tapes in the back of your neighborhood, family video store.
Gotta go through the beaded
curtain. Yeah, but it's gone through all of these phases, and it's like why if I could have the same kind of nostalgia, and if we can, if young people can have all these kinds of experiences when they're young, why not make a safe pathway for people to be able to get into the industry and make money this way as well, right?
So that's the key. I think that's something that we need to talk about, the safe pathway.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky. Like I said, I was really lucky because, I just happened to come across the right people, right? It was very much luck and also, timing, just the timing that I got into the industry, and also, but anyway, it's, over my lifetime, I've always had the right people in my life. Even when I had, situations that I might have gotten into that were not great situations, like I always had community that I could go back to, right? And so, because I've had, my own experiences with companies wanting you to do more than what you were contracted for, or, I had, my ex-husband trying to take my kids because I was in porn, it just, all of the different things that happen, being paid less money because I'm a black woman, not having as many opportunities because I'm a black woman.
There, I cannot believe, it was the last thing I said to my wife before I left the house to come here tonight. I want to find out, what in the hell, how could even that industry permeate racism?
Yeah, I mean, and it's most of the industry is still very much owned by good old boys. It's like, you gotta remember, prior to 1988, porn was illegal, and so to shoot, and so it only became legal in 1988. There was a federal case called the U.S. versus Freeman, and that case made pornography separate from prostitution. That was not that long ago. We were in grade school, right? Mm-hmm. And so anything before that, because it was illegal, a lot of the industry was owned by the mob, It's still very much a good old boys industry. it's very much mostly cis white men who own these companies. They own the distribution. They own the production companies. They own, they are the directors. For the most part, they're hiring people they know. You see a lot of black and brown men in the stock rooms. You see a lot of, cis white women and cis white men in the offices. And you do, starting in the 90s, you started to see a little bit of, sprinklings of black directors, and, you get a few more black folks a few black folks here and there that own companies. But for the most part, the industry is mostly still owned by white people. And so when you have white people deciding what is sexy, what is desirable, what is beautiful, what sex looks like, how we identify black people, how we identify other people of color, they're exoticizing, people of color in the industry. They're exoticizing, black men and fetishizing black men for their big black dicks. Or their BBC, their big black cocks. They're gonna put white women in positions where they're being defiled by black men because, they're gonna portray these kinds of sexual encounters in ways that fit stereotypes that they have because that's what they think about us. Ultimately, not you personally, Sue, but you know what I mean. It's like
me,
but you know what I mean. It's like that's because it's not just people of color in the business. It's also white women or white presenting women in the business, right? It's like because they want you to fit into their idea of what is sexy. That's why for the longest, everything was big blonde, blondes with big tits. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like, mm-hmm. and some of that has started to shift. I remember in the 90s when like alt music rose, you started seeing alt looking women also with tattoos and dark hair and like, edgy looks and images. And it's like, but even when you show, fat women, like the ways that their bodies are objectified. Right? Mm-hmm. Or the way that they are degraded. And we see the same thing with like trans people, the way that they are, they're objectified in such a way, like you can't just put people in scenes together to have great sex. Even the way that you title it has to be in such a way that fetishizes those individuals so that, the person who they are shooting it for, which are other white men, right? Mm-hmm. It's shot in a way and it's presented in a way that allows them to justify their fantasy, whatever that is, right? Mm. And so, yeah, I mean, porn is one of the last great bastions of racism. But that's because, porn is a microcosm of the rest of the world. It's showing people their innermost fantasies and desires. And a lot of that shit is fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
Now I wonder with all this technology and OnlyFans and all that kind of stuff, how much longer they're gonna have that power? Is it beginning to fade a little bit?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, back in 1999, I launched my first website, and back then, it was all a new frontier. When Napster came along and people were using it to do peer-to-peer sharing of not just music but also television, film, mm-hmm. and porn, right? And the porn industry did not get on top of peer-to-peer sharing the way that the music industry did. And that was their biggest mistake. As a business model, you do not let people give away your product for free. And they did not get on top of that. They did not protect their intellectual property. And so that when the tube sites came up, like your Pornhub, RedTube, XTube, all of those, Xvids, the industry created a generation of consumers who never purchased porn.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
To this day, we're now on the second generation that thinks that porn is free, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was their first mistake. Because they made that mistake, as technology, kind of like started to grow and shift, and people could take, photos with this, as opposed to having to buy like a whole light kit, a Sony Handycam, a Canon camera, it's without having, as the barrier to entry became lower, and also the social media, Friendster, MySpace, Black Planet, back in the day, that moment when social media came up at the same time that we were getting this, like an iPhone, what happened at that moment was we had a pathway to sell direct to consumer, right? You didn't have to deal with with a middleman anymore. You did for a while, but the need for the middleman, the need for the studio system began to deteriorate at that moment. So now we have, it used to be that you'd shoot for a company, you'd want to be on the box cover, because then you would go to a feature dance agency, they would book you on a tour of strip clubs, and you needed the box cover for posters and for 8x10, so you would sign them, and the box covers was what gave you the walkway, right, to go into the club as a headliner. Strip clubs are a non-factor these days to the bigger industry, right? It's not as much of an impact on the porn industry as it used to. And so now it's like you have, instead of the box cover, you have Instagram. Instagram is your box cover now. Because you don't tour, you might do, there are people are still touring. They're not touring clubs, but they may tour like as an escort instead. They've cut out the middleman. Instead of giving this guy a lap dance, I could just see him in my hotel, for however much money. Like, it's the business model has changed. We've steadily we're starting to disintegrate the need for the middleman, which means that ultimately the talent keeps all the money, right? So and the power, and they get to have more autonomy over their body, over the type of sex they get to have, over the way that they're described. They don't have to deal with somebody calling them some, like big ghetto hose number 5. Like, it's like they get to choose how they are, even described. Like, do you know what I mean? It's because they get to brand themselves in ways that the companies might not have considered branding them, because they're looking at talent from a very linear, often racist point of view, right? And so, and now what's, with the ways that like OnlyFans and some of these other platforms have come up, the thing that's so important about that is that the barrier to entry is lower. Right? When I had my first website in 1999, I easily had $2,000-$3,000 hosting bills just for my bandwidth and my storage. Now OnlyFans takes 20%. Do you know what I'm saying? And so it's like, instead of me having to put out all this money up front that I may not get back, in terms of like subscribers and people spending money, I can just pay them, and I let them deal with the credit card processing, let them deal with the chargebacks, let them deal with all of that stuff, and I still get to make money. And so and this is great as a business model for not just people like me who have been in the business and have a following and have the ability to scale on these sites, but it's also good for people who have no jobs, who live in communities where there are no jobs, who are dealing with houselessness, who are trying to pay for motels every night, people who are trying to keep a roof over their kids' heads, people who, can't find jobs because they have a criminal record, right? It's, or they, it's like they lost their job because of COVID, or they're being underpaid in their job that they do have, and they're still not able to pay their rent. You know what I'm saying? It's like, instead of working 2.5 jobs, they can work one job and also, put up pictures on or videos on OnlyFans. You know what I'm saying? And so it's allowed a lot of people, like, especially for people who are used to working in cash-based businesses. You get a 1099. And that 1099 is really important if you want, like, housing, you know, or access to government services, you know, because you can't, you know, if you don't have a pay stub to prove your income, they're going to make it even harder for you to even get food stamps, you know.
Now, when you talk to people about these kinds of things, because I know you do, is it hard for them to shift their way of thinking? Because no,
not at all. I think that there's a lot of there are a few people, I think, who are willfully obtuse when it comes to this sort of thing. Right? Willfully. Because there are some people who really just want to believe that it's just because you just like getting fucked. And it's like, well, everybody who enjoys sex do it because they like doing it, right? It's the reason why we still have a population, because the shit is fun and it feels really good, right? If it wasn't a good time, there'd be no kids.
Nobody,
like, you know, because labor is a bitch. Do you know what I'm saying? So if it didn't feel good, women would be like, fuck this shit. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's not it. Nobody wants to work. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody wants to have to go to their job. Like, if we all could just, like, live freely and, you know, have a good night's sleep and hang out with our families and go to the beach every day, like, that would be ideal for most people. Like, do you know what I'm saying? But we're all going to do some sort of labor. And at least if you can find work that you enjoy and will pay you enough to live, right? Those are the two things that are most important. You know, we always say, like, if you know, there's that saying, if you know, find something that you love to do and you'll never work a day in your life, why the fuck not this? You know?
Yeah. So what is your time frame on no studio porn being dead? Because it's gonna be.
I don't know. I don't know what a timeline would look like. You know, a lot of these companies are, you know, they've been around a long time, and as they're finally starting to get it that they need to, like, make some changes. You know, and I don't know that they will ever die. My hope is that, and I hope that they don't, because we need companies like that who have big money to be able to fight for, like, against censorship. To help pay for lobbyists to be able to push through legislation. I mean, like, we need people like that. We need companies like that. My hope is that these companies that you know, myself and some other folks that I work with, that, you know, collectively we can push them to make changes, so that as younger, you know, Black and brown and cutie pop folks that come into the industry, that they are able to navigate the work safely. Right? And without having to deal with the everyday microaggressions that they are dealing with, while they're also simultaneously having sex with people that they don't know most of the time. You know, we need to be able to make it to where when people do this work, they are, you know, that there's, you know, that they're not subjected to a blow bang with 5 guys in Confederate flag T-shirts. Like, do you know what I'm saying? As a young Black woman, that there aren't companies like Ghetto Gaggers where they're flying young women across country with, you know, and taking them directly to the studio, in, you know, from the airport, from an overnight flight with no hotel, and then putting them in compromising situations to where they feel like they can't say no to this scene that they're about to do. Like, do you know what I'm saying? It's like we need to make sure that white women are not being paid more money than Black women for doing the exact same labor, often with the exact same men, right? It's like simply because it's a Black guy. And so, you know, like, things like that, you know, need to change, so that when some 18-year-old shows up from Kansas or Tennessee or Detroit or DC or Chicago or Florida, that they're not coming into the industry into some bullshit. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that for me is, like, the most important thing, because a lot of times people are not coming. They're sometimes you get, you know, more and more every day we're starting to get people who are coming into the business through sites like OnlyFans, right? So that's good, because those people, it's good and bad, because those people won't go through that studio system bullshit, but there's also room for exploitation in other ways, because they're also not coming in through the studio system.
Mm-hmm.
So those people may not know about like HIV and STI testing every 2 weeks. They may not know about maintaining IDs and paperwork to keep them, to protect themselves from, if somebody decided to come show up and knock on their door because they want to see the IDs of the people that were in those scenes. Like, do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's kind of good and bad that we've lowered the barrier, but we need to make the main business safe, because that's going to create a ripple effect with everything else.
This Strongly Worded podcast is brought to you in part by the Flagler County Basketball Program. For high-quality, community-based youth basketball for young people ages 8 to 18, look no further than the Flagler County Hurricanes. Enrolling now for spring season, with games starting on March 20th. We still have openings across all divisions. For more information, find us on Facebook, Instagram, or go to flaglerhurricanes.com. So, I know we're getting closer to the end of our scheduled time, but I can't, like, you and I are the same age.
Yeah.
So, what are you doing now? Where are you now? And are you?
Yeah.
What do we do in this industry as we mature?
Yeah, I mean, there are people who are still performing. Like Nina Hartley is in her 60s, and she's been performing since the 70s. She's over 60, like she's over 65. I know, but for me personally, like I have always, and I know people who say that they'll do it until they just can't. They have no plan to leave, not because they don't, they have an exit strategy, but they plan to continue to do this kind of work. And for me personally, like I'm at a stage, I've been doing it for 26 years, and now I'm starting to look at transitioning out of the business, but still wanting to work within the industry. I'm planning to buy a house back home in Flint. Mm-hmm. I want to be close to my mom and my sisters. And as I get older, I want my farm, and I want to be able to I want my farm with a lake, a little pond and a pool in the back and some horses. I want to take it back. But one of the things that's really important to me, I've been working with, since last year, I started this organization called the BIPOC Adult Industry Collective.
Yes.
And it's BIPOC is Black, and stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, for those who don't know. And we've been working on this issue of racism and wage disparity by offering people, peer-to-peer education, access to mental health and wellness, and also financial assistance. So we give out 3 $500 micro grants every month. We had, when we were first talking about the micro grants, we were trying to debate if we wanted to do like 10 $150 grants, but we decided that we would give out a smaller number of larger grants, because the larger grants can make more of an impact for people. And so we also started fundraising during COVID, because when the pandemic unemployment benefits came out, they explicitly wrote out anyone in any companies or people in the sex industry, and also people who work online. So legal sex workers who were working online were exempt, and so we started funding to, because a lot of folks who were working in person, doing either full service sex work or dominatrix work, or people who were working on the streets, they didn't really have an option to. A lot of people didn't have the option to work. And so, understanding that not everybody, people don't work in the industry in a binary where it's like they only do one or the other. A lot of people do both. We decided that we wanted to specifically offer some assistance to people who, work as content creators and are performers in the industry. And so we started doing that, and then we said, everybody's fundraising, so we started doing these events where we could do, offer people education that they needed to be able to make money. or also to be safe. We've had conversations on, and when I say safe, I mean like not conversations around consent, contract negotiations. We've done things on navigating race and gender and sexuality within the work. Things like that are really important to people's mental, emotional, and psychological health. But also things like, OnlyFans 101 and content creation and scheduling social media management and things like that are more practical skills also to help people be able to work and make money. So we started doing those things, and then we offer a restorative yoga class every week for sex workers for free, and it's sponsored by Ray Threat. And we also have a support group that we offer every week for stress management as well. And so we're really trying to take care of, before we can really attack some of the more systemic issues with agents and companies and things like that, we wanted to make sure that we could take care of the people first. Because ultimately, asking people asking people to strike is really challenging when people are out of work and cannot and need to pay their bills, right? And so you never want to put people in the position of being of crossing the picket line, basically. And in an industry that, there is a union that's been in existence for a couple of years, but not everybody is a member of the union, right? Because we're all freelancers, so it's not a big unified voice for everyone in the industry. And so it's hard to convince people that they shouldn't work for these companies or these platforms until they change their way. That's a privilege that only a small percentage of people can do, because they either have the clout or the money to be able to not work. And so it was really important that before we started dealing with some of these other issues that we took care of the people. And we've been doing some really powerful work. We have two of our members. One of our grantees is an immunocompromised pregnant sex worker with a small child, and she was looking not only for financial assistance but also for diapers. And so two of our community members, each of them took on a set of diapers, one for the newborn or for the unborn child and one for the other child, so that they could just on a monthly basis just automatically send them to her. And we've been able to give money to two people who were looking for money for gender confirmation surgery. Quite a few people who are houseless or home free that needed money. Someone who needed to was looking to buy camera equipment, not only for their own content creation, but also for other people in their community that they wanted to help with shooting content. And, they're just really trying to do the work of making sure that the community can be taken care of. Because when you fill the gaps where people are vulnerable, they're less likely to experience exploitation of any kind, right?
Yeah, because you're not as desperate.
Right, because you're not as desperate. And so it's like, if we can help somebody to be able to pay rent, then maybe they won't take a gig where they have to do something that they might not have wanted to do otherwise, right? Because that happens, or and you give people the opportunity to make sound decisions when you can help them, and so that for me is it. I'm super I love this work. I don't get paid for it. I put in 40 plus hours a week, making sure that we can do it, in addition to doing my own content creation for my own OnlyFans and Sex Panther and talking dirty to people on the phone. But this, I feel like this is, service is the rent that we owe for living on this earth. And, this industry for 26 years has raised me, and it's raised my kids, and it's helped me to be able to go to school and travel around the world. And, it helped me to lift myself out of poverty, and so, and I know that, legal sex work in general, but particularly legal sex work, because of the access that it gives you, has the potential to give people economic liberation, whether you are a black or brown person, male, female, trans, or whether you are white and from a poor community and community union town that is no more, a factory town that is no more. It really has an opportunity to lift people out of poverty, and I think that some of the issues surrounding like decriminalization and the fear of black and brown men, the same reasons why the war on drugs, the war on sex, they're aligned with each other. The racism that is behind the war on drugs is a lot of that has to do with the laws that were with cannabis prohibition. A lot of that had to do with the fear of white slavery, with the Mann Act. Like, these two things are married to each other. Mm-hmm. And so, it's, while I'm also doing this kind of community work, I'm also, very much advocating for and trying to find ways to get involved with legislation and decriminalization, because, Angela Davis said in several interviews actually that, the increased population of black and brown women in prisons is mostly because of arrests for prostitution. And so, it's a way to be able to, to incarcerate black and brown women and trans women. And so for me, it's like, because I know that most of the people I know work in both criminalized and legal forms of the industry, I feel a, very strong affinity, and also, like, I mean, I've been working in criminalized forms of the industry for most of my career, and as well as the legal industry. And, I recognize that we have to dismantle this false hierarchy and allow people to be able to, have people like myself, companies like your big companies, your Vivids, your OnlyFans, like, they have to be able to reach across the aisle and make sure that the most vulnerable in the community are also provided for. Like, plain and simple. The internet is forever. There are, there are.
Got that right.
There's video. Yeah, I mean, there's videos. I just did a film screening 2 weekends ago with Jeannie Pepper, who's an old friend of mine who came into the industry in the early 80s, and we found videos of hers online on a tube site. Mm-hmm. Videos from the late 80s, and so it's like, it's because of that, and a lot of people don't know, like, in porn you don't get residuals. And so, you don't get residuals, you're paid a one-time fee, and then you're paid less money if you are a person of color than your white counterparts. So there's no room for, like, saving. There's no 401k, there's no Roth IRA, and yet your image is out there forever. And so, for me, a lot of the things that we're fighting for, from decrim to, fair wages, these are workers' rights issues, right? Mm-hmm. And as a kid who grew up in a union family, like, fighting for workers' rights is like a part of, it's in my bloodline, like, I remember my folks striking and being on picket lines. And so, we may not be on digital picket lines, but we can still, make sure that people eat. Right. We can make sure that people have housing. Yeah. So it's only fair.
It is. It is, and I think that's a good full circle point to end on. And I so appreciate you being a guest on the show and sharing yourself with us. And I'm really glad I sent that message that day.
Yeah,
it's been awesome to reconnect. Of course.
I was so excited.
Yeah.
I was like,
Sue takes the chances.
I was like, of course, absolutely. I was like, we went to school together. Like, of course we're gonna do this. Like,
that's so awesome.
I know you get pulled in a lot of different directions, and I never wanted you to think that I was, reaching out to do something salacious or whatever. But
No. I just knew that it wasn't going to be something salacious, and I have a good.
That's next time.
Yeah. I have good sacral energy, so I know. I go with my gut. I know. I knew. It was
well, thank you for your time.
Well, Sinnamon, thank you very much for spending the evening with us tonight on a Monday night. Ladies and gentlemen, You can find more about the Strongly Worded podcast. You can find our Facebook group, the Strongly Worded Pod group. We're on Instagram at the Strongly Worded Pod, and on Twitter, the Strongly Worded P, because we ran out of letters. All right, Cinnamon, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Good night.
Take care.
Good night.
Stay in touch.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This Strongly Worded podcast is written and produced by Johnny Hampton and Sue O'Leary. Music production and vocals by Marshall Max LaMont Hamilton